No more questions.
Okay.
Larissa, if you need a few extra minutes, don't worry about the clock.
Okay. So I'm going to get into the next section, which actually encompasses a couple of goals. So the main objective is under the safety goal, but it absolutely crosses and sits in our MTSS goal as well. And that is about our social emotional learning as the school climate coordinator. And as my heart is a school counselor for many years, this is an area that is interesting and exciting, so I might start to talk really fast. I apologize, because this is really where my passion sits, and I'm excited about the things coming from this. So really, as an educational institution, we have to address our student achievement. That's why we're here. That's why we're reviewed. That's what the state looks at, obviously. However, in order for a student to make those achievement gains that we're looking for, they have to have the behaviors in order to access that. We know that, right? You have to be a good listener. You have to follow directions in order to get the most out of our instruction. I take it a step further and say that in order for us to access those behavioral skills, students have to have basic social emotional skills in order to access appropriate behavior. For example, when we have negative behaviors, we intervene with them using social emotional strategies. If you are constantly blurting out, we're going to use self-management strategies to help you modify your behavior. We're going to use blurt counters. We're going to use social stories. We might give you visual cues. Those are part of self-management, which is a social emotional learning skill. If you will indulge me just for a moment, I take every opportunity I can to teach about where these things come from so we can empower our students to know more about them. If you would hold up your hand like the number 4, anybody can do this. We're going to do a little bit of a brain model here, and this is a powerful tool for our students to understand where things are coming from and why we need to teach them. So I teach my students here that this tiny little thumbnail that you have is your amygdala. They love that word. Right? This is where your feelings come from. This is where your strong emotions come from. When we put our fingers over that thumb, this is our brain. This bumpy part here is the thinking part. This is where we learn. When my feelings get out of control or they get super strong, whether I'm super angry or super stressed or even really happy or excited, my brain flips out. It turns off. And we show them visuals of actual scans of what happens. When I'm not thinking, I'm not learning. We have to teach our students how to calm this part of their brain so they can access it at all times. There's lots of things that go into that component. I'm going to kind of show you the 5 areas of social emotional learning and where those sit inside of that brain structure. SEL is about 5 main components. If you look on the visual, the orange components of self-awareness and self-management are our intrapersonal skills. These are the skills that we need to identify who we are, what our feelings are, and where they're coming from, how I can manage those feelings. The green areas of social awareness and relationship skills are interpersonal skills. How do I get along with other people? How do I empathize with others? How do I take action when I see there's a need, right? These are our outside, our relational type of skills. The last skill is responsible decision making, the one in yellow. I cannot make responsible decisions if I am lacking skills in all of those other components. I'm going to give you a personal example. I'm going to be open with you. Right now, like so many people, I struggle to find a balance between work and family and all the other responsibilities of my life. When that happens, I'm having a self-management problem because I'm starting to eat and not exercise and not make those healthy choices, right? So this is very surface level example. But I know, because I have self-awareness, that that's coming from my self-management. I have to have things done. I like to get things done. I also know it comes from my lack of relationship skills because I don't want to let people down. But I have the strength in my self-awareness to understand what I need to do in order to change and make more healthy, responsible decisions. Our students don't come equipped with those skills, especially if they're exposed to trauma or multiple layers of trauma, and COVID is a traumatic incident for everyone. So when our students are lacking skills in order to address any of these 4 and 5 areas, they're not going to make those responsible decisions, which therefore translates to their behavior, which translate to how much achievement they're actually going to have. So it is important for us to identify that social emotional learning is a powerful tool. The good thing is, I know what I need to do to better my decision making, but I also know that we can teach all of these skills. These are all teachable skills. So we can implement, and by implementing, research shows that you can gain 11% increase in your academic achievement scores by implementing social emotional learning throughout the student day. More importantly, it provides our students the skills they need to be successful in the real world. Fortune 500 companies who have been interviewed and asked what skills they need from our students, it's all about getting along with others, problem solving, being able to take constructive feedback, and making decisions appropriately. Fortunately, for somebody like me, I'm super excited that SEL has taken the front seat in education. One of your handouts there is the most recent reopening handbook from the DOE. And in that, number 1B, behind student safety, is student social emotional learning and mental health. So I'm very excited that that was part of the reopening plan. I'm even more excited to share that the strategies and ideas that were listed in there are things that we're currently working on, embedding social emotional learning within our MTSS framework. Talking about restorative work through morning meetings and circles, capturing student voices through our survey process. We are already starting to implement these things for SEL. In fact, we started early this year by looking at the program called Character Strong. Character Strong has a purposeful people component, which is for our elementary students. Presently, we bought that for every elementary school. There are varying levels of implementation and exploration of that program. We've purchased it for 7 middle schools, 5 high schools, and we've also purchased 1 leadership curriculum, which we hope to expand into our Safe Promise clubs in the future. This program provides books, videos, resources to teach the social emotional learning skills hidden under a character trait. It also provides opportunities, which is where the most powerful work comes in, for students to be able to question, reflect, and respond to their own growth in relation to their peers, which is the most powerful tool we have. As far as our long-term goal, we want to be able to embed SEL skills and instruction throughout the day. A complete marriage between our SEL competencies and standards with our academic standards is where we want to get to, and making sure that our instructional practices align as well. SEL is not just a program that you do for a separate period of time. That's where we're starting to get that common language, but that's not the end goal. Daughtry is one of our pilot schools who has embraced this work fully. So I provided you an example of a unit that their SEL team created this year to look at how they can take the ELA standards of reading and writing, embed that with the SEL standards and the work from Character Strong program, and they created a week-long unit that the whole school worked through, including the special area teams, and they incorporated all their standards with the SEL standards. And it was a seamless, wonderful opportunity to show that cross-department work. In the upcoming year, we're going to be working with our curriculum specialists as the new standards come out to make sure that we're in alignment with the work that the standards have, the books, the lessons, all of that, to start working in our SEL standards to make sure it's hit throughout the student's day. And lastly, to ensure that our schools get fully trained, because again, this is part of that massive training component of MTSS. SEL is one part of that. We have created school climate teams known as SEL champion teams at our schools. I am guiding them through an SEL implementation planning process so that we can start to work through how do we embed this at our school sites. An example on the screen is one of the Smarty goals that the schools have created. They have a plan for next year. The Smarty goal Reverend Golden includes, it's a SMART goal, which we work on all the time, but SMARTY makes sure that schools are looking at inclusive and equitable practices as well. So making sure that we're capturing all of the components as we start to embed SEL in our schools. The majority of our schools are going to be looking at adult SEL. So if you see on the screen, it says draft goal statements for strengthening adult SEL. Many of our schools are going to be dabbling into incorporating Character Strong more into their schools, but really they're going to be starting their focus on how we train our staff and make sure that we are all using the same common language and concepts when it comes to social emotional learning. And my time is up.
Board members?